I'm Isyander.
And I'm Koda.
And today we're going to keep talking about the endless bureaucracy the Imperium of Man is capable of generating. We're going to be talking about the one, the only, the many-headed hydra that kind of nobody likes in the setting, the Administratum.
Does anybody actually like bureaucracy?
They do.
You.
I like logistics. I like
There's
efficiency.
a difference between logistics and bureaucracy.
Yes.
If anything, bureaucracy is a hindrance to efficiency.
You do need some. What is it? It's like what is it? Is it all rectangles or squares, but not all squares are rectangles?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like they fit into a similar paradigm where, like, logistics requires some bureaucracy, but not all bureaucracy is
there too.
It actually helps logistics, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Sometimes, actually, a lot of the time, it is, I'm pushing a pencil. Why? Because somebody needed to push this pencil, and my dad pushed this pencil, and so we're going to push this pencil.
Obviously,
and now
this pencil being pushed has to be useful, because otherwise, why else would we be doing that for generations?
I have a real-life pet peeve experience with this that feels like Administratum style, where they've started building sidewalks in my neighborhood, which is all well and good. Everybody loves sidewalks, right? Lets you walk places. Great for dogs, great for everyone. Who hates sidewalks?
Sidewalks are pretty awesome.
If you're anti-sidewalk, let me hear it. Let me hear the arguments. But basically, they started it. Yippee-ki-yay. They start doing all the work. They rip up the entire street, pretty much.
Yeah, including people's fences and trees.
And then stop. And I'm like, I ask one of the construction workers, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we're waiting on the permit. Yeah. I'm like, what do you mean the permit? The permit so we can start digging and then, like, actually set this all up. And I'm like, you have to go permit by permit like this? You can't just bundle them all and just give me a sidewalk? No, this is just how it is.
You already dug the road up.
And I'm like, why on God's green... You already sent people to survey? Why on God's green earth are we not batch doing this? You want to build it. You've already approved ripping everything up. What happens if you stop now? Are you just going to replant everything?
No.
Honestly, probably is, that's all they can do. But that's...
No, because the city has now eminent domained that property. They're not going to...
It drives me up a wall, and right now I am basically hiking to get anywhere. It's a pet peeve and the exact kind of stuff the Administratum does, but, like, reasonable. If the guard had to deal with that, like, oh, well, I just do this form, wait a bit, do this form, wait a bit, like, that's pleasant compared to what the Administratum churns out. And so we're going to cover some of that. We're going to be covering why, despite being the single largest department in the entire Imperium, well, second only to the Guard, I'd say. They're big. They're very big,
large.
right? There's not many novels on them.
No.
I don't think they have actually, no, they don't have a single hard Administratum book out there, and people do want that. We're going to cover why that's a good idea, and also why that's not a good idea, you know?
It would be a very boring book, but a very clear insight to the setting itself.
Yeah, we will also talk about the sheer scale, how much they integrate into every bit of Imperial life, how the hierarchy is both complex and almost entirely useless, how they have been a part of every both good and bad thing that's happened to the Imperium, and some of the weird that is almost exclusive to them. So it's going to be a very fun episode.
Yeah.
And while they may not have had any hard books for me to read, it did give me a good excuse to go back and reread a couple of books, like Avenging Sun, where they do touch on them every now and then. And let me tell you, first of all, read Avenging Sun. Second of all, I love it when Games Workshop writers get to, like, pass by the Administratum, because they always have fun with it. First of all, they hire talented people, but then they always have fun with it. And so I'm personally in the camp of give them a book. Please give them a book.
Even if it's like an office-style comedy, like, it'd be wonderful.
Yes.
Office Space, but it's the Administratum.
I'd saw an arm off. And so that's what we're going to be doing. But first, we got a poll. New options are out.
Yeah, the poll is polling.
Yep, and the options are the Octarius War, High Fleet Leviathan, the Plague Wars, and the Devastation of Baal. This is going to be...
4. I declare it plague.
This is going to be pretty cool, and this is probably the most, like, single war-focused, like, single front-focused thing we've done in a while, so I'm very curious to see where we land on this. Y'all already know how it works. Sound off in the comments. If you're listening, there's usually, like, a little place you can put it, and, if you're leaving us a 5-star review, because you guys love to do that, you could also leave it there, because I see everything, and I count everything.
What are you, the Panopticon?
A little bit. In this regard, I am, and if none of those options, are for you...
I see into your soul.
I just see what you type. And if none of those options are for you, then leave an option for what you would like to see, because I also count those too, and it's a hell of a spreadsheet. because it's not just, I'm not a madman putting tallies on my walls, we have organized this somehow. So top 3 are going to get made. The last one's going to go to the losers bracket, which is coming next. So you won't have to wait too long for that. And that should be very, very good. We also have a Patreon where you can get a whole bunch of perks. You can get tons of episodes, a bonus one every single week, access to the Discord, which is great, community days, which one is happening this weekend when this goes live.
Yeah.
So that should be very good. Don't worry, it's not the only one for this month, because February is a short month, so we're going to do another one, as well as a whole bunch of perks while helping us not buy more lights, because it's bright. It's very bright right now.
Yeah.
But keep them on. but keep the lights on.
Maybe we need to get some accent lighting in here, but as far as lighting goes, that'll be it.
Exactly.
These are pretty bright.
It is great up in there. According to the patrons, it's one of the best patrons you could possibly be on. That's not me. That's the street saying it. So you can take it up with them. And you can get all of those fun perks and help us out by heading on over to patreon.com/Isyander and Koda. For those of you already there, thank you very much. For those of you clicking the little link in the description, thank you as well. Now, let's get into the Administratum.
The chaos that is this little bureaucracy.
It's the epitome of, if you do your job right, nobody will care. That's, like, you could roll credits right there. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much the entire vibe of them. If the Administratum does their job right, nobody cares. Mm-hmm. And that goes to show kind of how often they do their job right, because they're huge. Yeah. You aren't hearing about them constantly, at least in the scale of the Imperium. However, you do something wrong.
Things are collapsing.
You do something wrong, and everyone immediately knows your department, your badge number, where you work, how long you worked. Like, they will jump down your throat so fast. It is the most thankless work. It is the most, because here's the thing. At least the guard have the entertainment of a Chaos Marine running through me.
Yeah.
That's at least something. That's stimulation. And depending on which version of it, maybe it's a Slaneshi one. That's at least entertaining. Terrifying, but entertaining, These guys don't get that.
They get the stimulation of being held late on a Friday.
And a Monday. And a Tuesday. A Wednesday and a Thursday, Saturdays and Sundays too. Yeah, nobody really likes them. If you ask most people who actually have to interact with them, they want them gone. Mm-hmm. This extends also to Gilliman, which we'll touch on later.
Feels like real life.
Yeah, it's really rough, but they do still exist. They do still persist, and it's not because anyone's really fighting to keep them per se.
It's because they're fighting to keep themselves.
No, well. It
bureaucratic
does
agency.
Insist upon itself a little bit, but also they were given their mandate by Big E themselves, and they do keep the signed paperwork in triplicate still. So you want me gone? Bite me, effectively. We have it stored in the back, and where else are you going to find his signature? Where else are you going to find his signature?
It's just right here. If somebody tries to shred it out, you realize we have that wasn't
the only one.
That wasn't the master copy. That was a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yep. And he originally, because the Emperor was the Emperor of mankind, he's like if Manifest Destiny had a hair metal do going on. He wanted the entire cosmos effectively to be ruled by him. We're summarizing a lot about him. He did have a vision.
He's got the hair metal do, but we really need to see him in the glam rock tights and the leg warmers.
Some of his older art really reminds you 40K came from the 80s. It really reminds you 40K came from the 80s and 90s sometimes. And then other times they've really toned that down, sadly. They've made him like a
serious.
They've made him like a brick of a man in some art pieces I've been seeing, and I don't know if I like that. I've also seen him look like the protagonist from Hatred, so it could be worse. So,
which way, Western man? Serious Hatred or Iggy Pop?
Yeah, Iggy Pop. He really had no limits to his vision. The epitome of shoot for the stars and we'll conquer them all. And to accomplish that, it requires a lot. His Great Crusade was a massive undertaking. Billions of men, incalculable resources, all being commanded not just by him, but by 20 different highly competent demigods with their direct input on the battlefield.
Or 21.
Or 21, or 19, records vary.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a time period when worlds would have to deal with Angron arriving to bring them into the fold through diplomacy. That was a thing.
Gunboat diplomacy.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you also have to remember that's the good outcome because, sometimes the Emperor himself could show up if you're a big enough problem with his custodians.
Gunboat diplomacy, but the cannons are being fired.
Or curs could appear. So honestly, in the grand scheme of things, at least Angron's honest. Give up or I will kill you all.
So that one's more like the kamikaze, actually.
Yeah.
And I mean the original event, not the pilots.
Yeah. This is a time period when the Emperor of Mankind had 2 functional knees and would occasionally use them.
They didn't even creak when he stood up.
Oh yeah. This really was the Imperium of Man at this time. Really was a force almost nothing could withstand. However, just because you are a lot doesn't necessarily mean you don't need any kind of planning.
I mean, yeah. You are only one person. It's not like you can teleport from place to place doing literally everything at once.
Well,
you do need some help, either in the form of literally some helpers or like making sure all of your ducks are in a row before you even get to what you're doing.
Yeah, and this is at the time when he first created the Administratum. This was a time period when he hasn't taken a loss. As far as records show, he cannot take a loss. The way when a custodian is deployed, one of the Emperor's core guards, right? They don't even bother to find out how it went. They just record custodian, victory, right? I promise you the same stuff was happening with the Emperor of Mankind. I promise you. He could not take an L until that one really big one.
Yeah.
So when you think about it from that perspective, that is why his word has so much power even to this day. There was nothing you could do. Nothing you could do.
He just showed up and
he was canon undefeatable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when they were first created, they were meant to support the Great Crusade, and that's a big undertaking. Obviously, he would have been served by putting one of his sons on it, but instead he actually put one of his best friends on it.
Malcador,
yeah, Malcador.
Right?
We did an episode on it, and
that weird creepy guy in the corner of every photo.
Yeah, that's honestly, yeah, that's a very good way.
Dad told us to call him Uncle, but
he's in every family photo, and I don't think we've ever gotten his real name.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever even talked to him other than maybe one short conversation, and half of that conversation was a grunt.
No, Malcador is a lot. We still don't know what he was fully capable of. We know he could choke out a Primarch.
Yeah, definitely choking out a Primarch.
We know he could scare them from time to time.
Yeah.
And he was the record holder for longest time, sat on the Golden Throne at a little under a day. Until it was shattered by Big E's 10,000
Yeah, I was going to say, he's now in second place, is he not?
Yeah. We cover all this in the Malcador episode. You should watch it. It's very, very good. The only regrets I have about that episode are I wish I included more descriptions of his time on the Golden Throne.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we will do a Golden Throne episode where I fit these in because, I'm blanking on his name. But in the End and the Death, they do such a good job describing how rough of an experience. Why am I blanking on his name? I should know this.
I mean, to my understanding, I thought it was just a couple seconds and then he went poof and then was gone.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a couple seconds. We don't know the exact time of how long he sat on there. We know it was under a day, but more
substantial than a couple minutes.
And we see it from his perspective, which is just agony. He's weeping tears of dissolved sanity. That's a direct quote. You see why I wish I included more descriptions?
Yeah.
Weeping tears
of dissolved sanity.
I remember he described it as it's such good writing. He described it as being sheared by razor sharp realities. Sitting there with every moment feeling like galaxies are unfolding and dying, and never really knowing where it begins or ends.
No wonder people refer to the God Emperor as a God Emperor.
Yeah.
Because that's weird.
Yeah.
That's like gazing into the abyss.
If I remember correctly, when the Emperor first sat on it and still had some meat on his bones, his body would twitch every now and then, which God shows how painful that is.
We really only have a speaking account of the Golden Throne from Malcador.
Yeah.
Huh.
And that's what the Emperor's been just raw dogging this entire time.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think that sunk in. The remains of the Emperor, post being battered by Horus,
were still
sat on the throne, and occasionally his knee would slam down,
twitching in pain.
Yeah. Which Oh, that chair. We need to do an episode on that chair.
That thing sounds horrifying.
Yeah, that chair is bad. It's bad. But yes, that is the guy they first put in charge of managing everything. And despite him being incredibly competent, Amazon Prime box is still wound up late.
It is the span of like an entire galaxy. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah. It took a little bit for them to hit their stride. Not everyone was a big fan of them in the beginning, and even it's a good thing the Malcador was the guy in charge of it, because it makes you wonder how much worse this could have been if it wasn't somebody his caliber. You know what I mean? Like, the only person they could put on the job that's better than him is not even any of the Primarchs, but you got to start picking and choosing which one in specific we're talking about here. Like Guilliman, yeah, probably. Magnus, he could figure it out, I think, you know?
Yeah. But Malcador was like the only person who could have done this as successfully as it was.
Yeah, and so he actually managed to get it up and running. And post-heresy, this is a trend you're going to notice with them. They kind of, every time there's a vacuum, the Administratum grows to fill it. Every time there's a vacuum, the Administratum goes to fill it and fill it and fill it. And this has led to them having departments on departments on departments that are like, this is the department for planning and processing the process. Before we plan the process altogether. Like, it is, you think I'm kidding, but there's a Departmento Processium that is just to process paperwork. They're not working through it. They're not actually
processing it.
They're just making sure this goes to the right department and, critically, is signed and sealed using the appropriate wax and ink.
Well, when you don't have, like, a word processor, you do need word processors, people.
Yeah.
I mean...
And these are critical documents. These are whole worlds asking for help, and this is before they get to the department they need to go to, where they will be processed in the order they are received.
Not in order of priority.
The order they are received. They're
FIFO is not the way to do governmental documents.
That's how they do it. Yeah, it's bad. They're unending people. Basically,
imagine if, like, the Cuban Missile Crisis was shoved behind a load of other documents that are just like, well, this is happening today. What would you like for lunch? Comes up before the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, that's how the. Well, I will be fair. There's some new departments being created. Like, there's a department just to grade paperwork. So, like, nowadays, it'll first be processed, then go to them, and then they'll grade its importance. That's a step. That's improvement right there. That's lean manufacturing, even.
It doesn't matter if the documents are still FIFO'd in.
Their minds would be blown if they read any. Yes. They're so.
Can see already how most people hate this organization.
Yeah, and that's me getting ahead of myself. That's today. For now, it's they weren't that big yet. They were still plenty big, but a lot of the time their mandates were curbed a little bit because, like, look, this form wasn't signed in triplicate. The name's Guilliman.
They weren't allowed to insist upon themselves as much as they are in
like,
today's
yap, sure. Like, Russ won't care. I'm so sorry.
Sometimes
you send Russ a sheet of paper saying, go here instead. He might go there if he deems it so, but he's also not stupid. You know, he will not just go through procedure for procedure's sake. He will do what needs to be done.
Sometimes the leveler or smarter heads will prevail in this situation.
Yeah. But in the wake of the heresy, things start falling apart. The God Emperor has been beaten, so that's already one big check gone. So instead of acting as his mouthpiece, they are now just the closest thing you have to his mouth.
Yeah, they're the last people with his handwriting on things. Yeah,
exactly. And this causes a huge shockwave through the entire Imperium, and everything needs a rewrite, from the whole Space Marine thing to, wow, the Emperor actually low-key did a lot of stuff.
What do we do with all this?
Shove it to the Administratum. And
I can't handle this project. Just give it to the people who have the last piece of paper signed by him. Yep. They must know.
And then slowly, as time goes on, each one of his sons starts vanishing. Some go off on pet projects, Others discover why the human neck is meant to be one contiguous piece.
Whoa.
And if it's not, things get very, very difficult. A lesson that one of his sons had to learn the hard way and be crammed in stasis about. And
Wait, is that where Manus is?
No, that's where Gilman was.
Oh.
Yeah. It's relevant for you because you're coming in after he's woken up, so you see him as like an active player. There was a time period where he was just a statue.
Gilliman was beheaded too?
No, not beheaded, just like nicked by Fulgrim with a horrific sword.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the continuous line of his neck was
it was
discontinued for a moment.
Exactly.
I see.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about Manus for a moment.
Yeah. No.
He's dead.
He's dead.
He's dead.
He's the only Primarch who's dead. Well, him and Horus are dead.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
so
even
dead.
Horus is up to question now, considering the weird rewrites they seem to be doing.
Well, that's not the topic of today. Moral story is the Suns are leaving slowly, and as they do, the Administratum takes just a little bit more power, a little bit more power, a little bit more power.
It's like a goldfish. It grows to expand to its new environment.
Perfect example. Yes,
But it's also a very invasive and parasitic on the environment it lives in.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Khan goes off to speedrun Elder Pub Stomping, the Lion goes off to take a nap, and the entire time this fish is growing and growing and growing with new departments and new procedures. And now that's how they got to
Suddenly
where they
you
are.
now have a 6-foot fish.
Yeah, this is how they got to where they are as important to the Imperium as the miles of veins that run through you are important to you. Like, it's the blood here that matters.
Yeah.
But it's not getting anywhere without the veins.
Yeah.
It is not getting
But I don't
anywhere.
like that implication that my veins have a parasitic relationship with me.
Oh, well, these ones do. these
You know
ones
what?
do
Actually,
in
imagine
spades.
if your veins had a parasitic relationship with your body. That's what this is.
Yeah, and this is what led to the Master of the Administratum being the single most important geezer in the retirement home. Because, yes, 40k plays with a concept that is utterly unrealistic of a bunch of very, 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 very old people making every decision despite not being able to feel the impacts of any of them. An utterly fictional concept.
Very unrealistic.
Exactly. And
Couldn't happen anywhere at all.
And so these people who need chairs to go upstairs and denture glue every night are the ones sending billions to die every day. And of all of those geezers, the one who has the biggest prune juice allotment is the guy who gets to control the prune juice shipments. That's the Master of the Administratum. And he is big. He is... This would become most clear when the Church and the Administratum merged. They went through a mergers and acquisitions phase.
They obviously didn't read John Locke.
Yeah, no, there's no trust busting going on here. Teddy was nowhere to be seen.
That's not.
No.
trust-busting.
I'm talking in this situation.
Oh, I see.
Because those two departments should have never been allowed to merge.
No. Well,
But,
again, John Locke.
the Pope bought Amtrak
separation of
effectively.
church and state. Yeah.
Yeah, the Pope bought Amtrak effectively and really ran with it. If there was any department as powerful as them, the ecclesiarchy is really high up there because, yeah, sure, they move everything, but the Administratum almost, it molds the culture. It molds, they are the imperial cult. It is not, they are not the emperor's mouthpiece per se, but they're the closest most people will ever get to hearing his voice. They are his interpreters. They're the ones who get to kind of set the tone for all of that. And so you pair the department that can never be questioned with the department that moves everything, and you put a guy named Goge Vandire in charge of it, and a rain of blood happens.
This totally wouldn't go to anyone's head at all. No, I imagine if you were given all of the power of one country with a huge military and like just endless swaths of bureaucracy that are just ripe to be used, it totally wouldn't go to your head.
Yeah, and so with those two departments merged, he could now use them to make his will manifest anywhere he wanted. It was the equivalent of being able to just slam down at any point, anywhere, with no oversight. Like, none whatsoever. I just sign documents, and if you question me, this ink, you know who's better? The Emperor. You want to go ask him? He's radioactive over there. Go try it. He chars Custodes' armor. You go try chat to him. Oh, you melted. Oh, should have listened. Should have listened. And so this
it's like that scene from the third Batman movie where the Bane takes over Gotham.
dude,
Death or exile? We choose death. Okay, death by exile.
I love he did
Death or radiation? Death by radiation.
He did a very good job as Bane. I did not expect him to do that, but because Bane's huge,
Yeah.
and he just no human can get that wide safely, but he managed to sell it. He managed to sell it very well.
Nobody cared who I was until.
Nobody cared who I was until I put on the mask.
Voice was an odd choice, but I also wound up liking it. This kept going and going until Space Marines had to get involved. They had to stop doing what they normally do, which is make trailer footage and turn around and go,
what's going on?
What are we doing? And it's not just them either who had to get involved. The Mechanicus had to get involved too.
Funny.
That's how bad these two departments merging is. They don't normally care because they are basically the Imperium's entire IT department, manufacturing, and they're the arms dealers.
Listen, when your family drama is getting so bad that even your cousins are checking in on you.
This isn't your cousin. This is like your milkman checking in on you, effectively. This is a company that runs itself and does its own thing. Do you know how bad things have to get for Raytheon to get involved in the U.S. government?
Yeah.
That's effectively what's happening right now. Raytheon, Boeing, all of them just came out of the woodwork and went, "What are y'all?
Are you okay?
Doing right now? My card declined at a resort. That is unacceptable. What are you doing right now? This cannot run. I don't care. Figure it out."
Do you want a new Predator drone? I can make you a new Predator drone.
Yeah.
Maybe a version 2 of the SR-71. That'd be cool.
Well, nowadays they want drone swarms, actually. Yeah. Which that's apparently the future of warfare. At least what's publicly shown. I don't actually work for Raytheon or the Department of Defense, so I don't know what the future of warfare looks like.
I'm not gonna name names. But
I have a good relationship with my Fed. Don't ruin this.
Camera technology is not going to get good enough to beat stealth. We've been trying, and it's not been working for decades and decades. Anybody who tells you stealth can just be beaten with a camera, you probably shouldn't listen to them.
But yes, Raytheon, Boeing, all of them effectively get involved in the Mechanicus. And on top of that, even the custodians have to get involved to break this up. With them typically kind of just being really, really tall golden statues that will slice so much as a fly that gets too close to where they're guarding. They're very competent. They rarely leave Earth. And during Vandire's reign, it got so bad, they were like, okay, we're technically not leaving, but what's going on here? This is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. And it takes that massive combined effort and letting somebody into the Emperor's room, which bleaches their hair white. They survived, though, which is a pretty big deal, but their hair's bleached white after that, to finally put an end to his reign. And he's executed by the Proto Sisters of Battle, which is really cool.
The Proto Sisters of Battle, that if you watched the Sisters of Battle episode, were kind of just like his cronies for a little bit until they became disillusioned by this event specifically.
Well, he was the mouth of the Emperor, and then they actually went and saw the elephant's foot in this case
and realized, oh God, we've been lied to this whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, you would probably do exactly what they did to your betrayer if your betrayer betrayed you to that extent.
Precisely. And that's how Goge Vandire's reign ended, and that's how those two departments were split permanently in true Administratum fashion. His last words were, "I'm too busy to die." He was just signing paperwork and sending it off, too busy to die, which means there's a non-zero chance 100+ years later, people were getting sheets of paper from him and just going, what do we do with this? Do we follow these orders? Do we follow this? And maybe there's a deep department that didn't get the memo at all, and they're just still doing it. Because there's a non-zero chance that's happening.
The Department of Anti-Goge Ordnance, I don't know.
We'll get to this a little bit later. The sheer scale of it means that there are some obsolete departments that are just still repeating what they're doing. Yeah. Because...
well, like a computer, it's just going to repeat its last order. If this...
a little bit of that, but there's other factors that really perpetuate it. From this point, the church was not allowed to ever have men at arms, which means, hey, Sisters of Battle are okay, you just can't have dudes.
pristine legalese, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
That's so good.
That's perfect legalese. And those two are permanently severed from each other. You cannot do this again.
No.
Because this is an unbeatable chair. You can't stack them that high.
There need to be some checks and some balances here.
Yep. From there, their story is the exact same as the General Imperium's, suffering on a scale you can't even imagine. They're being battered. They're being ripped apart from almost every angle, with things really coming to a head in today in 40K,
43, 40,
yes.
42 maybe?
Galaxy's ripped in half,
yeah.
And as you can imagine, that's a lot of paperwork. That is new forms we need to create.
Yeah.
And Excel sheets that just do not work anymore.
No. You've got so many red cells. So many red cells. You don't even know what to do with these reds. The entire spreadsheet's red. It's broken from a fundamental perspective.
This is where we really get to why I want more books about them, because I mean, their story is generally that of the Imperiums, right? But because we don't get very much about them, we don't really know what they're doing until there's a crisis or someone's abusing their power. So we can only assume they're filing paperwork.
They're continuing to operate as normal.
Well, we do get little hints. Like, for example, they have Wars of the Quill going on. That's just a thing that happens.
Is this just internal infighting?
Which lets me bring up something vitally important that you may have caught on to at this point. They still, despite the vital importance of the work they do, because of the Imperium's reliance, or rather their hatred of technology, abominable intelligence they call it, they still write everything with pen and paper. They calculate, they audit, they catalog, they aid and defend millions of worlds, holding billions of people using ink and paper.
Not even a typewriter.
They do get typewriters. Some of them do,
okay.
and like mech arms.
Okay, so maybe they can write multiple documents at once, or at least print out the pages. The printing press,
abominable.
The printing press is abominable intelligence.
You never know.
It's not intelligent.
You never know. Plus,
you never know when the printing press. Do you think that then when they were publishing things like the Reynolds pamphlet, they were like, I don't know, maybe this one might revolt this time. Maybe it might say something bad about Washington.
Maybe. I mean, to be fair, the Imperium got much further than they got. They couldn't fathom the stuff we have today.
Yeah.
Like Benjamin Franklin, if given unfettered access to the internet's not inventing a thing. He's not researching anything.
No.
Anything. There are no keys being stuck to kites. There's no writing being done.
No, there are just 4 letters worn on his keyboard.
Oh, yeah, obviously. Yes, exactly. So
for those who didn't know, he's
Jesus. Would you like to share the fact?
No, I'd love to share the fact.
Go ahead.
Benjamin Franklin, for those who didn't know, was a bit of a womanizer, but he had a very specific type, and that type was GILF.
Yep. That's one of our founding fathers, ladies and
gentlemen. One of our founding fathers. The first recorded piece of art, we'll call it, yes, is of Benjamin Franklin. Because he was late to a meeting, because he was at the time being ambassador to France, and his assistant went looking for him, went to his apartment, only to find him
yoga?
Doing yoga, yeah. Doing yoga. Partnered yoga. And sketched him out on a piece of his journal.
That's weird that you'd sketch it out. I don't know I'd feel if my assistant did that.
Yeah.
What are we... Why sketch it?
Knowing Benny Boy, he was probably like, sick, this is awesome.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, they like to keep their tech...
I think that's in the Library of Congress now.
I don't know.
Which means it's also public domain.
Non-zero chance. As you can imagine, for all of those reasons, they do not like technology one bit and refuse to use it. They actually don't even use paper because paper does degrade over time. They use vellum, which we have used too. Yeah, it's specially treated skin. It's like what the Magna Carta is written on and stuff. It actually has some pretty good staying power.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it makes sense.
Usually from animals, but it's Imperium, so...
If you have an especially rowdy hive world...
Vellum them all,
Yeah.
This stuff is so important that they've gone to wars about it. They're interdepartmental fights about vellum shipments. They send teams deep into the guts of hives to scrap vellum, wipe it clean so they can write new stuff on it. Yeah. It's so fun. There are whole worlds whose job it is to just mass manufacture vellum. That is it. That is all they do all day, every day, is just print it out. And if you think factory farming is bad, this is the Imperium of Man.
So what you're telling me is there is an office-style parody of Warhammer 40k where they're vellum salesmen.
Yes. They sell vellum and vellum accessories. Yeah, exactly. They are the vellum people's vellum, the vellum person's paper, the vellum person's vellum people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. that is a real thing that could very easily happen. A blank sheet of vellum, endless possibilities. Yeah. They by weight, it is the 7th largest shipment to Earth.
Of course.
Like, they grow pigs to the point where they can't walk anymore just to get more vellum out of them.
That's disgusting.
It's 40K. Come
I
on
mean,
now.
yeah, it makes sense,
And
but that's
on
disgusting.
top of that, they've gone to cloning and, like, vat manufacturing pigs just to turn them into vellum. That is it. That is it. And it's only, like, this department that uses it.
But a typewriter is evil.
Yeah. Well, no, like I said, they do get typewriters.
But the printing press is evil.
I would say there's probably something close to a printing press, but
Well, considering it's like, considering their paper is skin, don't you have to tattoo it to write things down?
pretty much.
Okay.
Well, they still write with like quills and stuff too. If you look at any bit of art about them.
So would a printing press work? It had
No. There's art of them with like tiny little printing presses and like nifty little. Again, because they work with the Mechanicus. They're the ones who approve purchase orders. The Mechanicus, here, have some extra arms. Just fill out the paperwork faster. Just like 10% faster, because the margins are going to be so nice and thick. You know that? Like, genuinely, the Mechanicus could improve their margins by helping these guys speed up their processes.
Yeah. Well, when you don't have Excel, what can you do other than add 4 extra arms?
Yeah, exactly. Now, part of this is because the Imperium is just, outside of the Imperium, they have to have a vibe to them. They have to have floating cherubim everywhere. They must have skulls doing maths running,
Yeah.
Outside of the canon, that's why they still use pen and paper. Let's be honest. But within the canon, they've given us a couple of reasons. We're going to start with my favorite one. They just like the feeling of it.
You know what?
They're stationary geeks, and they just appreciate writing on paper.
Valid.
Or vellum. Which I fully get.
I get it.
I have my favorite
get
pens. I have my favorite paper. Recently, there's been a new addition to my favorite pens because one was sent in by a fan, and it was meant to replace my G2. It wasn't that good at first, but the more I used it, the more I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, and so
it's a great supplement. I really like those.
I won't say they're Govey on YouTube, but like you know who you are. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, actually,
whoever gave us those rollerball R2s,
it has made it into my.
It's not on my like nerdy pen pocket right now because I've taken it out to use it somewhere, but it usually has a place in my nerdy pen pocket.
Yeah, no, that was a good shout. And so, as somebody who's like that, I get it. There's just something more satisfying about writing it down. But the far more realistic one
It's a shame that, sorry to like interrupt you, but like it's a shame that Remarkable tablet is like so close, but like just so far.
I'm gonna stick with pen and paper until I figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's number one. I quite like that one. Is that the reason they're still using paper and mass? Probably not. The more likely one, the one we always get, is how do you expect me to trust anything in a cogitator wafer? Which is their version of a computer chip that you do have to pray over and spill some incense on and humana. Yeah, exactly. Which, to be fair, in 40K, it's very fair and reasonable. Like, there's the scale. I mean, you've already seen they keep documents for a very long time, and data is very corruptible by the warp, by cosmic rays. I mean, there's 101 ways you can flip.
we have data that every so often just gets corrupted by the right wave of cosmic background radiation.
There's so many ways you can flip a 1 and a 0 just like that without you really doing anything wrong.
And this is a universe with the warp.
Yeah. We haven't even touched on Zinj.
Yeah.
We haven't even touched on Zinj. He makes data storage in and of itself a problem. And so ink and hide, this is basically eternal.
Yeah.
That's basically eternal. Chaos can't get to this, and neither can Disc Raw. We are winning right now. This is great. We're going to ignore the fact that, vellum, while not being as flammable as paper, will still char. And critically, chaos has trapped men in books howling in pain.
So
they definitely can mess with ink and paper.
That they can.
Now, the question is, does every single scribe in the Administratum know that? Probably not. Only the Department of Historical Revisionism would know that. Because, of course, they have one of those, and we'll get to them later.
Zinch altering the shipment manifest on one ship to change every M to an O on a shipment of bombs.
Yeah. Oh, I just got that. That's dense. But the Imperium would still execute the order because the paperwork says so.
Oh,
So,
now
you
you
know,
made it grim.
It's the name of the game. Yeah, so they obviously don't know the extent of Chaos's power, but this makes them feel secure in their work, and like it's going to last the test of time. And honestly, to be fair, their work is both mysterious and important. So I kind of get why they are like this, and it has worked. They have records from the Great Crusade that are accurate. Now, conveniently, certain names are missing, like Horus? You probably won't find those there, weirdly enough, Will you find Alpharis and Omegon? Maybe, possibly, But
some of those notes are probably in an archive somewhere, or somebody's, bottom desk drawer.
Yeah, but if anyone wanted to birth their Big E, this is the department you go to. Because they definitely have his birth certificate somewhere. And, how do you know that's the corpse? You know what I mean? All we have is bones at this point. How do you know that's the emperor? I'm just asking questions here. Show me the paperwork.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Those bones may have come from Hawaii, but,
They...
God, what a strange movement.
And so, yeah, so they have all kinds of stuff like that. They also have whole departments, like I mentioned, to just go through it and make sure certain facts don't make it in. So a form that says, hey, we need help. We swear we've seen the Emperor's reborn son, Angron, flanked by demons, and we cannot win this, will be changed to a single bold heretic has caused a massive uprising on this planet. This is why 1 million innocents must die to save or get a single heretic. Please send us some supplies.
Imperial censors or something else.
Yeah, and then there's also a sub-department that's staffed entirely by Inquisitors that just checks their work. That's all they do all day. And if a scribe saw something they shouldn't have before it was caught, a description of something that shouldn't be possible based on their knowledge, they are the ones who disappear them and or come up with an excuse and or honestly, congratulations, you've been promoted to the Department of Historical Revision. These are the things you should know about.
You have two outcomes. One of them is you've been promoted, and that one's good. That one's pretty okay. Mm-hmm. The other one is you are you have committed Boeing whistleblower.
Yes, that is exactly how they handle this. They also make sure that the historical revisionism is consistent, and because this is the Imperium. There's good historical revisionism and bad historical revisionism, and so whenever a son of the Emperor is spotted, he must have slain whatever beast was before him and won. And what a glorious day this was for the Imperium! And like Cadia cracked, the guard never stopped. The planet broke before the guard did. It's okay. It's fine. Keep it up, citizens. It is so funny because this to me is one of my favorite departments. It makes sure that all of their records are accurate. Incorrect, but accurate. So you will always consistently see the same things, just not the truth.
Yeah. Or at least a moralized, a moralizing version of the truth.
Yes.
Basically just telling the Imperium apes together strong, no matter what.
Yeah, and then they hand this out using the Commission of Moral Truth, which is a different department. How can you hate? Come on.
This is so many layers of just... Oh.
And can you imagine if your form is the one going through this side detour because you included far too much of a detailed description of what you're seeing? Oh no, you doodled something Zinchian. You've killed at least 2 scribes in the process now, and this form is being quarantined.
Noam Chomsky and his 8 filters are crying in the corner right now.
If vellum is their largest import by weight, their seventh largest by weight, I would not be surprised if paperwork is Earth's largest export. Like
Not paper.
paperwork and red tape. Paperwork and red tape together are probably Earth's single largest export. People will regularly, whole worlds have died waiting for forms to be processed. Paperwork has been sent back to now dead worlds because the wax used to seal it was incorrect. Yeah. And this is the IRS too. Like, the IRS isn't a different department. This is the tax man doing this to you.
You know, funnily enough, this makes sense for the IRS.
Just send me a bill, man. I've been very
Please,
consistent
just
about
send
this.
me a bill. Please,
just send me a bill.
Send. You know exactly how much I made this year.
Yeah.
You know exactly how much I owe this year.
Just send me a
Please, just send me a bill.
Yeah.
If I have some form of contention, then I can send you that along with what I think might be revisions to that bill. But just send me the
And
bill.
Also, I'll be fair to the IRS, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. You can reach them directly, you know?
Yeah.
You'll be on hold for a while, but you can reach them directly. If you want to reach these guys, you must first go to your planetary level office and then go to the subsector office, then the sector office, then the segmentum's office, where it is then graded for importance and sent to the appropriate department. Those are two separate departments. And if you included anything heretical, chaotic, xeno, or had any errors at any point here, it will bounce back to the beginning.
It's at least better. Being on hold is better than this. This is
Even if you do it all perfectly, it will be processed in the order it is received typically.
which means you could be dead by the time this is finally acknowledged.
When I was reading for this, you'd regularly see scribes go, "Oh, we're only 50 years late. This is a big deal. We're doing great."
Only 50.
Only 50. We're only running 50 years back on paperwork. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for us, honestly.
I don't even think I'm signing up for Medicaid. I'm just jumping off a cliff.
There's a reason they're very, very much so hated. But you got to remember, dude, pencils need to be pushed.
Yeah.
And we need a way to push them.
Listen, if this wasn't a job that was important, I wouldn't have it.
Yeah, and also, like, we can't just send Bane Blades everywhere. Like, look, the Mechanicus has incredible production capabilities. Yes. The Imperium far exceeds them.
Yeah.
Like, they have whole worlds with people working 20-hour shifts. That's actually me being very generous. 23-hour shifts, you know, to just churn out Bane Blades.
Hour nap every day, that's fine.
Still, we need more, you know? Like, there's a very valid argument of, yeah, we really should, like, think before we move this, especially when you consider Chaos has certain advantages that the Imperium doesn't. Because, for example, a Traitor Primar, like, I love using Angron because he's a very consistent problem, and, like, everybody knows him at this point, you know? Angron has arrived at a planet, and that is a very big deal. We will send a lot of resources to it. However, we also cannot send overkill to it, because it doesn't matter if we kill him. He will show up somewhere else. This is moot.
You need to be light on your feet while still having enough, like, punch to throw at him.
And, like, then there's also the unique problem that, like, Tyranids present, where it's like, okay, well, we need to throw everything we can against this, but be careful, because we're also just feeding them too while we do this.
Mm-hmm.
So
you got to be careful about what specifically you throw at them too, because they'll absorb whatever they do.
Yeah, and then also this is all while other planets are sending in form after form after form. So I do need a way to grade these, because, like, yeah, okay, cool. You are starving. That's bad. That's bad. Mortarian has taken his shoes off on that world. And that's so much worse. He's walking around barefoot, and somebody needs to stop this. There are shirtless plague marines. Nobody wants to see that. You know? And so there has to be...
Disgusting.
There has to be...
That's disgusting.
Some form of, like, process to this. And so, yeah, they suck, but Do you see why it's so hard to deal with this?
Yeah, because they've made themselves so important, and like frankly, there are some issues that are just when you have issues on a galactic scale, there will be more issues. There will be issues that are slightly more important than other issues, but like all of these issues are bad, but also.
And again, at least as a guardsman, hey, maybe you'll see a Primarch one day if you get really, really lucky. These guys, no podcasts, no music, no back. At best, there's a creepy cherub hymning. Like at best, there's a creepy one just floating right above your head, just humming. That's the best you got to get through your day.
No music dance experiences?
None.
Nope. No waffle parties?
It is utterly thankless. There are no perks. The perk is continued survival.
No melon breaks?
No.
No finger traps?
Nope.
No mug cozies?
Nope, nothing. There's zero incentive. The incentive is they have their own internal private army that will turn on you. That's your incentive. That is an armed guard who will just as quickly take me out as defend me.
Sure.
And you see why. It's rough.
It's rough.
It's thankless.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, send me to the guard. You know how bad?
I'd rather be there because at least there's something stimulating about being shot at.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, Angron's terrifying, but at least that's something to do. And like, this is one of the Imperium's biggest job creators. You flip a coin as a human, odds are you're either in the guard or you're doing this. Well, you flip a coin, odds are you're either in the guard, suffering in a hive, or you're doing this. You know, those are the three most likely outcomes.
Yeah.
You know, and so they have it rough, but because of that, you can have so much fun with them. Like you could set like you said, you could set like comedies in the Administratum. They're a whole, and like you almost can't mess with the canon with the Administratum because there are whole departments that are just doing paperwork or going nowhere. You could
have free reign. You could do whatever you want.
You could introduce Scribe K. Shroot, and it perfectly work. It would perfectly work, and nothing would get messed up because there's so many departments. Yeah, sure, there's probably K. Shroot running around somewhere, you know,
running a corpse starch farm.
Yeah, probably. Well, it's less of a farm and more of a grinder.
Nah.
I mean, what are you you're not growing the people, you're grinding them down.
You gotta sanitize the terms a little bit because otherwise it sounds horrifying. You
also
demoralize your people.
Yeah. You could also very, very easily set it. You could, if you're doing an RPG set in 40K, it's always a good background to have because it's a good way to have esoteric and useless knowledge. It's great. It's perfect. Do you and your party need something done? This guy can sign the form in a perfect format in triplicate too, and it'll just get there.
For some reason, he speaks perfect Eldari, and no one's asked him where he got that from.
Well, you know, historical revisionism requires you to know multiple languages. Like, the people can't know certain worlds have been... Like, this is a real thing. They do actually work with the Imperium's version of, like, federal agents to report tithe evasion. Because regularly, tithing will get a little too low from a governor, and then they will look into the paperwork and see this has been low for a while, and card's not declining, you know? So what's happening here? And sometimes just, you know, governor skimming from the top, at which point the Arbites arrive. Not good for you. They look like Judge Dredd. You never want Judge Dredd at your door.
Well, and they act like Judge Dredd too. But I'm thinking about the grim of like tithes are either food, people, or
yes,
in very limited supply money.
Yes, you figured it out. Yeah.
I don't.
Yep. Skimming tithes can be horrifying.
I don't like the idea of skimming people off the top.
The best way I've heard it so far is when the Tau started convincing planets to join them, their tithes would start getting lower and lower as, you know, people would wind up joining them. They'd start sending resources in for the greater good, and they were able to kind of pretty effectively figure out something's going on there and send the RBs, and they're like, hold on. Whoa, they're allied with aliens. Let's get Space Marines on this now. This is bad. This is bad, you know. And so they are kind of narcs in that way. All of their job, well, not all, but there's a good chunk of their jobs that are hereditary because we could do the whole LinkedIn process and get somebody in and have you train them as you approach retirement age, or you're working 16 hours anyway. Why don't you bring your kid? Father-son bonding time.
get them.
He learns the proper formatting. By the time he's 18, your back's going to be giving out. And then we can just swap him out, you know?
It's not unrealistic either,
Yeah.
considering a lot of countries have like military families.
Yeah.
Of just like, I served, my
Well,
dad served, my grandpappy
that's a
served,
very-
my grandpappy served.
That's a very different thing. At least here in America, like the military family is typically like, well,
Usually it's a thing of
grew up in
it's a thing of pride. You grew up in that kind of mentality, and so like you slot in quite perfectly, and that's kind of the thing that you are like
and
you mesh with.
and
well.
also like you think it's you do have the choice. This is very much so like
You don't have a choice.
my dad was an infantryman and I was on the front lines with him. And so I guess I'm an infantryman next, you know?
I was there on Take Your Kid to Work Day when my dad fought Tyranids.
Yeah. Thank God the Guard doesn't do that. It would be terrible for population numbers. But yeah, so they do that, which is how like what?
Sorry, I'm just thinking about like an infant in the lap of an F-22 pilot.
I've seen people take kids on like their little crop dusters and stuff, and that's always really like heartening.
Oh yeah.
I love those kinds of videos.
Um,
I don't know if I think.
I
listen, you
I
could take a
discovered
kid-
recently that if you have like an aircraft with two sets of controls, so you have the pilot and co-pilot, as long as there is a licensed pilot, your kid can fly the plane. And I've watched a video of like a 7-year-old land like a Cessna 152 perfectly.
Good on him.
It's like,
Or her.
okay, good job.
Yep.
Good
It's
job.
objectively neat. Though if you put a kid in a fighter jet, I do not think even if you train them on the whole breathing thing, they just pass out.
Would you like to hear a funny story?
What? Wait, would they not pass out?
Oh, no, they would.
Okay, cool.
It's been tried.
By who?
Germany in the 1940s.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
They built a jet plane out of wood. It had structural wood glue.
And they put kids in that.
They put kids in it.
Those kids are not meant to come back.
No.
Man.
Yep.
I see why they are why they never want to repeat that.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah, those planes were initially supposed to be, because they were losing pilots, trained pilots left and right, they were supposed to be cheap and easy to use. The designer originally said, so easy, a child could fly it.
this feels like
not
a
a joke.
Soviet strategy or a joke.
It's not a joke. And so when
I know we have German viewers.
they had extra of these planes, because they're made of wood, they're not that difficult to manufacture, they started donating them to a certain youth organization in that period of time.
Sure.
Would you like to know what the key failure point of this plane was?
Having a child pilot a jet?
No, the structural wood glue. The load-bearing wood glue. The wings were attached to the plane with glue.
Wood load-bearing wood glue.
Yep. You want to know the funniest part, too?
What?
The wood glue ate the wood. The wood glue was so acidic it would eat the wood and the wings would just snap off.
So what I'm understanding here is they had the propulsion system figured out. It was everything else around it that was really difficult.
Well, it was towards the end of the war, so they were just like, keep this thing going, strap whatever you can to it, please, just make it work. And then barely kind of made it work. It had a test flight, right? And their original test pilot flew it up once and landed it, and it was fine. But the second time he went up, the wing snapped off when he tried to make a maneuver, and it crashed in front of the entire like head of the Luftwaffe. And they said, "Screw it, just build it."
Sure. Why not? And yeah, that's why we do not have Take Your Kids to Work Day for certain professions.
Exactly.
The Imperium certainly still does.
And why we don't build fighter jets out of
With
wood.
load-bearing wood.
Load-bearing wood glue.
That's, for all the horrific inefficiencies in here, nothing like that's made it in, which is frankly impressive. But yes, so that is how some departments are just stuck in loops forever, doing the same thing over and over again. It's very psyche intensive, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
with it ranging from mind-numbing boredom, just like,
I'm here signing papers all day. This is like the 5th time I've wrote like 5 bombs on one sheet of paper.
to my favorite, where we've gotten a little bit like a short story covering a member of the Administratum who made an error, killed a bunch of people, and realized that they could just keep doing that and never leave their desks while being a very prolific serial killer.
I see.
Yeah. Stroke of a pen, thousands dead.
I see.
Yeah. And it was all believable errors. Like, whoopsies, the pattern of las gun we sent you, this isn't the kind we're used to. Shucks.
Sure, why not?
Just, oh, shoot. The food shipment took a circuitous route and all rotted before it got there.
I'm sorry. We sent you the grenades, sans firing pins, safety pins, and they just...
Warp miscalculation. They showed up 100 years late.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and so that is a thing that happened. It does not end well for them, I will tell you that much. But it's a very damaging job. It's a very, very damaging job. The DMV has nothing on them.
No.
None whatsoever. Because at least the DMV doesn't have its own standing army. You can at least be thankful for that. These guys do.
Frightening.
Yeah.
Frightening prospect.
Yeah, imagine next time. And then, imagine taking your license picture, then it has to go through approval. Actually, no, it has to be sent to the appropriate department, who then, like, your DMV, then your city's DMV, then your state's DMV, then the federal DMV. Actually, before it gets to federal DMV, it must be inspected, and then it'll go to the federal DMV, where it'll then be inspected.
Forgot about the subcategory of a regional DMV as well.
Yeah, exactly. It'll then be inspected, and maybe your picture will be approved or denied. Yeah, it's so bad that the Blue Boy Scout, Gilman, the guy who absolutely only loves logistics, took one look at it and wanted to rip it apart.
Yeah, I assume he just ripped it to shreds the moment.
One look at the org chart and wanted to rip it apart before coming to the conclusion, if I do this, I'd have to shatter the Imperium.
Because unfortunately, they've just infested themselves like a load-bearing root.
Yeah. And so what he does instead is create a new department out of thin air that is just, look, you only manage my crusades and you manage them well. And he just took everyone who was good at their jobs and just sucked them into this department.
He built a tumor on top of a tumor.
Yeah, and he was like, this is the real one. We'll deal with that later. This one at least works. We can start here.
He built a tumor on top of a tumor, hoping that the tumor would eat the first tumor.
Yeah.
Sure.
And to be fair, like the Indomitus Crusade is going up against a lot of terrible things. And
it does need a lot of background logistics to make that work.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I need my assassinations approved like this. I can't be waiting for the forms here.
Listen, I make the call. It simply happens right then and there. It needs
to happen. The front lines need to be in rapid communication. Whatever they need, they get.
Like, almost as soon as I say the word fire. It should be fire.
Yeah, and that's where the Administratum is today, with a tumor on top of a tumor. And maybe it'll kill it.
Maybe.
But what do you think of them?
This totally doesn't sound relatable at all.
Nah.
No.
It's
nothing at all. Nothing at all is similar to in any way to.
There is a lot of inefficiency. Nothing at this scale.
Nothing at the Imperium scale. No.
The worst you can say is, like, they're just not accomplishing as much as they could be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At literal worst. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. Also, the permitting process is wild.
Those sidewalks should be done. Those sidewalks simply should be done. The permits should have been handed to them. They have already dug up parts of the road. Their permits to put concrete down should have been given with the order to dig up the roads.
Also, I'm so sick of government projects that are like, we are going to change your life for the better. We'll be done in 2045. No. You have 5 years. Figure it out.
No, and then you hire a city contractor or a city planner that is like the perfect amount of obtuse, and so they can stretch that contract out as long as they can to milk your municipality for all the tax dollars they can. There is a tram project in the city that I live in that has been going for like almost 10 years now.
I know, and there's other countries that just have.
Because not
working transit.
Now, to be fair, the pandemic slowed them down, but they weren't working at peak efficiency before or after things started opening up.
I'm just like,
and so it's been going on for nearly a decade. A project that they predicted would be done by last year.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I'm so unenthused every time like somebody goes up and says, "We are going to improve. We're going to put forward this new program and it'll be fully functional 15 to 20 years from now." Do you know how much can change in 15 to 20 years? We need an actionable plan that we can
happen
tangibly
within
see,
maybe the next 2
we can
years.
tangibly see within your term.
Mm-hmm.
That way there could be consequences within your term.
Yeah.
You know? Like...
And get specific. What benefits are these actually going to do for us? Like public transit. Listen, the tram has taken a long time, but like...
Just give me a bullet train. I just want a bullet train.
Listen, yes, high-speed rail would be wonderful, but like local transit, local like just city trams, they're still good as public transit for within the city.
Bullet train.
Bullet train is cool.
Bullet train.
Yeah, bullet train. Oh, I would love a Shinkansen.
Well, also, it fixes a lot of problems. Like, for example, housing in cities being overpriced because, well, if you work in the city, guess what? You need to live near the city. If you have a comprehensive railway or the infrastructure to get somewhere, guess what? People can live further away from the city.
Yeah. Cities also do need to have a little bit more teeth about their public transit systems, because that's one of the problems with, if you live in the Bay Area, you probably know what has happened with BART, where like none of the stops are in reasonable places.
Some of them are.
Some of them are. Some of them are.
Some are not.
But like we've ridden on the BART when we were like taking a trip down there.
Stupid stuff.
We saw some stupid parking lots the size of mall parking lots outside of a BART station.
Yeah.
You have to drive to the BART. Then what's the point of having the public transit?
In true Administratum fashion, we talk about modern day inefficiencies.
Give me a train, a functional train.
There's so much that needs to be fixed. There's so much that needs to be fixed. But it's neither here nor there. What do you think of them, though?
It's real. It's just real. These are just going to be real complaints I have about the world in a 40K flavor.
Yep.
Like, why do you do this way? Stop it. You are just being net worse for the people who live in you.
Yeah. But that does bring an end to this episode. We will see you next week for an episode on
one of the 4 poll options.
Sound off on that. And as always, or if you're on Patreon, we'll see you earlier. And we'll see you again on the weekend for the stream. So it's going to be really fun. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening to Rail About the...
Rail about rail?
Rail About Rail.
Rail about rail.
There's so many. I'm like...
Oh, and...
this close to, because it's like
bad jets.
There's
too.
like, okay, because this is something I do believe in, right? Because like, you know, it's like you live somewhere, you're proud of where you live, you should get involved in where you live, right? I'm like this close to running for office about some of the things that, like, that should have been a single permit.
Give me a train.
Yeah,
give me a train.
There's so many little.
Give me a train. Give me a train.
There's so many little things. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for being here.